few seconds for folks to be able to join us in the Zoom room. And thank you all for being on time. Y gracias a todos por unirse con nosotros a tiempo. At this moment, I'll be handing over the mic to our wonderful interpreter, Vicky, who will be providing instructions on how to access the interpretation.
The interpreter, thank you, Chuy. The interpreter will first give the instructions in Spanish and then briefly in English. Bienvenidos sean todos. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos hoy. Ahora le vamos a explicar las funciones necesarias para acceder a la interpretación simultánea al español. Si están utilizando su computadora portátil o de escritorio, favor de localizar el icono con figura de globo en la parte inferior de su pantalla cuando este aparezca en un minuto y luego pulsen en interpretación de lenguaje, Language Interpretation, y seleccionen el idioma español. Si están conectándose desde su teléfono, iPad o dispositivo similar, busquen el menú con los 3 puntitos en la esquina superior del lado derecho de su pantalla y pulsen interpretación de lenguaje, otra vez Language Interpretation, y luego el español. Esto permite que escuchen la traducción al español con un 80% de volumen y el audio en inglés se escuchará al fondo con un 20% de volumen. Tienen la opción de apagar el audio en inglés pulsando Mute Original Audio, ubicado en el mismo menú donde eligieron el idioma español. Gracias. Ahora paso al inglés. For those of you joining that are English speaking only and will need interpretation if anyone is speaking Spanish into the English channel, we ask that you also will go to the globe at the bottom of your screen when it appears in a moment and then hit that, then hit English. If you're using a smartphone or an iPad or similar device, you'll look for the 3 dots at the top right of your screen and pulse on the little globe and then also language interpretation and choose English. Thank you very much to everyone. This concludes the instructions and ahora vamos a esperar que se activen los canales. And now we're
Thank you so much, Vicky. The interpretation channel is now open for those who need it. And again, if you are a Spanish monolingual speaker, please select the Spanish channel. Si solo habla español, favor de acceder el canal de español usando el globo abajo en su pantalla. Thank you. Next slide, please. Great. Once again, I want to welcome everybody to this space. It was great to see folks in person last month, and we're planning to reunite again in person at our May Portside Community Steering Committee meeting. And we'll provide information about that meeting closer to the date. If someone could please confirm that the Spanish channel is working, that would be great.
Yes.
Thank you, Domingo. Moving on to the next slide.
Se escucha bien.
Great. So for today's meeting objectives, we'll be continuing our discussion on the proposed amendments to the Portside Committee Charter. And consider a vote for approving those changes. Following that, we'll be having a breakout group activity to continue discussions on the proposed working groups and subcommittees that we discussed in February, and ask for feedback on meeting logistics on how those working groups want to function. And then lastly, we have a presentation from San Diego Gas Electric regarding their Power Your Drive for Fleet program. Great, and here is the agenda for today's meeting. We'll be starting with some general updates from our agency partners. Following that, we'll consider vote on the agenda and last month's meeting notes, and then continue on to the discussion and potential vote on the charter amendments, and then continue on to the working group subcommittee activity and discussion, and closing out with the presentation from San Diego Gas and Electric. And lastly, we'll open it up for public comments on items not on the agenda and close out the meeting. Great. And like every meeting, we just want to remind folks of our meeting agreements. We ask folks to create space for everyone to contribute. If you find yourself contributing a lot to the conversation, we encourage you all to step back, and folks who haven't, to please step up and provide your thoughts on any of the agenda items. We ask for only one person to speak at a time, to listen to each other and respect each other's opinions, knowledge, and perspective, and to please be conscious of time and to speak slowly and clearly for our interpreters. At this moment, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Anna, who will be doing a roll call for the attendance.
Great, thanks, Chewy. So we'll go ahead and do roll call now. So first off, we'll start with Keith Corey.
Here.
Great, thank you, Keith. Shelby Busso. Shelby. Jack Monger. Let's see, Jack. And then we did have a notice that Matthew was going to be absent today. Sarah Giovi.
I'm here, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Lydia. Sandy, Commissioner Sandy Naranjo.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. We also had a notice that Phil was going to be absent today. So moving along, Tim and Garrett.
Here.
Thank you, Tim. Is Mariela also here?
Here.
Thank you, Mariela. Nick Paul.
Present.
Thank you, Nick. Joy Williams.
Good evening, I'm here.
Good evening, Joy. Thank you. Martin Reeder. Let's see, Martin. Is David here?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you, David. Okay, Roman Partida Lopez. Let's see, one. We had notification that Dr. Stephanie Yoon would be absent today. Is Alejandro Diaz here? Yes, Alejandro. Diane.
Here.
Thank you, Diane. Samantha.
Hello, I'm present. Also, Helen Haas actually did take another position, so we are working to find another Navy alternate for her.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I'll make a note of that. Okay. And we know that Dinah and Liana won't be able to make it with us. Filomena Marino. Let's see, Filomena. Janice.
Present.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you.
John, I know I saw you earlier. Hillary Medina. Not seeing Hillary. Alicia Sanchez.
Presente.
Hola, Alicia. Margarita Moreno. Let's see, Margarita.
She's here. I think there's audio issues.
Okay, I see her now. Okay, thank you. Noemi. Noemi. Vanessa Contreras.
Present.
Thank you, Vanessa. We had noticed that Salvador and Montserrat weren't going to be able to make it. Silvia Calzada.
Present.
Thank you, I see you. Ashley.
Ashley, let me know she'll be 30 minutes late, so we can have her as late.
Okay, got it. And then Josephine.
Present.
Okay, and then last but not least, Maritza.
Present. Sorry.
I
Couldn't
said-
unmute.
Alrighty. Okay. So with that, looks like we meet quorum. So I'll pass it back to you, Julie.
Great, thank you, Anna. At this moment, I wanted to open it up to agency partners who have updates. To get started, I know we have a announcement from the Sandag team. Tim, go ahead.
Great, thank you, Chewy. So Sandag is now seeking public input via an online survey to inform our study, which is the San Diego and Imperial Counties Sustainable Freight Implementation Strategy. So the survey has questions about current freight issues and which projects and solutions that we should be pursuing to address them and hopefully improving the sustainability of freight in our region. So this project encompasses all forms of freight from maritime, trucks, and air, and it's available in both English and Spanish, and I'll put the links in the chat after for you. So we encourage you and others you know interested in this to participate. The study area is both San Diego and Imperial counties, so it's not limited to the Portside community. And the survey, which is we expect it to take about 5 minutes to complete, is open until April 14th. So you can contact either Mariella or myself if you have any questions, and I will put those links in the chat. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Tim. And I'll also be sure to send those links out after the call. San Diego APCD, are there any general updates to share?
Thank you, Chu. Yes, just a quick update. You all saw that there was a document that was shared with the agenda packet for today's meeting, which was a document that goes over some questions and responses as to how the CARB air toxics model was put together for Portside. As you all recall, CARB had presented that model a few times, actually, a few months back. And part of the purpose of that model was identifying risk and prioritizing strategies for Portside, as well as helping us identify a potential risk reduction goal for the community. And so that's really the next step with that project, is to start conversations with you all about what a goal could look like based on that model. And so that's something that we'll raise with the implementation subcommittee. And so more on that to come. And that's it for my end.
Domingo, did you say that was sent with the agenda?
It was sent with the agenda packet. It's a document that that goes over a series of questions and answers. It's documenting the process for the model.
Yeah, no worries. I didn't think I saw it, so I'll just have to check my email again. Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
Great, and I just added it to the chat, and I may not have sent it with the final agenda, but it was sent out with the draft agenda last Tuesday, if that's helpful, Sarah.
And we'll also post it on the website, on our website with all the meeting materials.
Thank you.
Great. Unless there are no other agency updates, let's move on to our next agenda item. So for this item, we, like all our other meetings, asking for an approval of last month's meeting notes and tonight's agenda. We do want to flag there are a few unnamed folks who provided comments in last month's meeting notes that we weren't able to identify. We could either hold off on approving the notes until we identify those folks, or leave the notes as is with those folks unidentified.
Do you need a motion, Chuy?
Yes, so if folks, maybe we can start with the notes. Do folks want to make a motion to approve the notes with a few comments unidentified steering committee members, or would like to move these notes to the next meeting so we can spend some time checking in with you all on who made those comments?
Motion to just move it along.
Yeah, I'll nominate that we approve the minutes and clarifications going forward.
I second Josie.
Great. Are there any other motions on the notes themselves? Great. Are there any, to move this along forward, are there any folks opposed to the motion? If so, please raise your hand. Hearing none, so the notes are approved. Moving along to tonight's agenda. Can we have a motion and a second to approve tonight's agenda?
This is Sarah. I'll motion to approve.
Great. I hear a motion from Sarah.
I'll second.
And second from Josephine. Thank you. Is there anyone opposed to the motion to approve the notes? I mean, the agenda? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, so the agenda is approved. Thank you all. Great, moving along, we are bringing back the proposed updates to the Portside Committee Charter. We incorporated feedback we heard from folks at last month's meeting, and I think it's a much clearer document. So appreciate you all for taking the time to think through any holes, considering voting procedures and email voting specifically. I'll be walking through these slides fairly quickly since they're mostly the same from last month. Next slide, please. So this is a high-level timeline overview of changes that have occurred in the charter over the past 5 years, with the most recent addition being an additional discussion at the February 2023 committee meeting. Next slide. These are the key charter sections that make up the document. Next slide. And in terms of updates, we did not make any changes since the last month's version on the background section or the steering committee objectives, so those remain the same. Next slide. In terms of membership, we maintained most of the changes that were incorporated in last month's meeting, but we did, based on feedback from you all at last month's meeting, we did include a new onboarding protocol item where new members will have a transition meeting with the retiring member of the same category if possible. And we think this would help the transition for new members and get a better foothold before joining the committee. Next slide, please. In terms of meeting logistics and the decorum section, those sections have largely remained the same, where the language has been updated to reflect the virtual meeting reality we are in now. In terms of attendance, we kept the same language on notifying ABCD and the facilitator if you plan on missing the meeting, and a lot of folks are already doing this already, so appreciate it. Next slide. In terms of voting procedures, there have been no major changes to this section itself, so we are still proposing to move to Rosenberg's Rule of Orders procedure that we discussed last week. Next slide, please. And in terms of voting procedures for emails, this is where the most substantive changes have occurred. For email voting, we are recommending that committee members may only vote on time-sensitive items over email after it was discussed at a public meeting. So this means items can't be voted on over email in between meetings, since they do have to be agendized and part of a Portside committee meeting. And then for those items that are presented at the meeting, we changed the language so only steering committee members present and those with an excused absence can participate in the email vote. And we kept the same language around email votes that must be included, and the recording must be included in those corresponding months documentation. Next slide, please. And then there is a minor update that would just align the language on email voting with the letters of support, where that the voting procedures would align with the language in that section. Next slide. And those are all the changes that we've made, substantive changes that we made in the charter since our last discussion. I'd like to open it up for comments and questions. And before doing so, I do want to highlight a comment we received from Jack over email, and I don't see that he's at the meeting. He actually recommended that rather than having folks with excused absences to vote over email, then he recommended having folks who missed that meeting, and in order to vote over the email vote, they should look at the acknowledge reviewing the meeting recording before casting their vote over email. So it's a slight differentiation, which we think could also work. So I wanted to leave that and raise that to you all as well. Maritza?
Thanks, Chewy. So originally when I had read the changes, one thing that came to mind was what was the how would we differentiate an excused absence and a non-excused? Is it just a notifying you or Domingo that they're not going to be attending, or is it like only certain certain reasons would be excused and others like aren't? So that was that. But then once you talked about Jack's comment as well, then that asked another question. So I'm just going to put them both out there. How would we be able to ensure that the person read the recording or watched the recording? Would we like have some kind of quiz, or if only if you read it you'd be able to answer this question? Like, how would we be able to score that, or prove that?
Good question. So in terms of an excused absence, we just require notification. We don't have any specifications in terms of what reason you have for missing the meeting. So what we would require for an excused absence is just sending us an email before the meeting, letting us know that you aren't able to attend. In terms of reviewing the recording, we would basically have an honor system. So we don't want to quiz folks. So we would just ask them to acknowledge over email to us that they reviewed the recording. And then we would accept that, and they can record the vote over the email, or they can participate in the email vote. But yeah, we're trying to keep things as simple as possible, and we'd like to honor us as adults to review the recording if they would like to participate. Great. Before we move on to the next question, I do want to highlight that the interpretation is not working. So just want to highlight that for Vicky and Gloria. Alicia said she's not hearing the interpretation.
Sí, ya, ahorita sí, pero toda la pregunta que hizo Maritza.
Ok, voy a repetir lo que...
Todo lo que habló Maritza y lo que estabas hablando tú, Chuy, no escuché nada. No interpretó nada.
Gracias, Alicia. Voy a repetirlo en español, solo para que sabes lo que hablamos. Entonces, Maritza preguntó qué califica una ausencia excusada, y mi respuesta fue que solo nos necesita decir sobre correo electrónico y no vamos a tener ninguna regla sobre qué excusa tiene. Solo necesitas que decir sobre correo electrónico antes de la reunión. Y su segunda pregunta fue cómo podemos asegurar que si alguien quiere votar sobre correo electrónico, necesita mirar el video de la reunión, y nuestra respuesta es que solo nos tiene que decir sobre correo electrónico que ha mirado el video de la reunión para participar en el voto de correo electrónico. Y esto solo es en casos cuando no puede asistir la reunión donde ese tema se está votando, y el comité en esa reunión decide mover el voto sobre correo electrónico. Entonces solo son casos muy específicos. Okay. The interpreters just told me they are now back. So hopefully the interpretation is working now. I want to hand it over to Nick.
It is working now.
Great.
Hi, Chewy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Cool. So I have a clarifying question. So as far as like notes and videos that folks would have to review prior to being able to vote, how soon after our meetings do those notes and videos get sent out? Is that like the week before the next CSC meeting in the next month? Like, I guess that's going to kind of dictate where I kind of land on that motion.
Great, that's a great question. So for folks who don't know, these Portside community meetings are automatically recorded and immediately posted on the Air District's YouTube page. So they're available right after. We do try to send a highlights email with the notes that y'all seen before, high level notes, and the link to the recording within a week of the meeting. But the notes do take a little longer since we have to go through the recording and review who said what.
Okay, but as long as folks can watch those videos, they then would be able to vote.
Yeah,
and that's immediately. Okay, okay, that's helpful. Another thing that kind of came up in conversation with some folks is I'm a little concerned about the requirement that email voting for time-sensitive items only be allowed for things that are discussed at a prior meeting. And so I kind of wanted to propose erasing that sentence from page 8. I think it's paragraph 4. It reads, the steering committee may conduct email voting on time-sensitive items after it was discussed at a public meeting. I mean, there's issues that come up in between CSC meetings that are urgent, and we might need the flexibility of being able to vote on items in between our monthly meetings. So like, I'd hate to kind of tie our hands to be able to vote on, I don't know, letters of opposition, letters of support, grant opportunities that come up in the future because it's written out in this agenda that we need a public meeting before. So yeah, just, I don't know if you need a motion to call to erase that qualification, but yeah, I'm concerned about having to have a public meeting presentation before having an email vote.
Got it. Thanks for that, Nick. And yeah, I would ask for a motion for that. And yeah, I think it's clear what you're asking for is removing the requirement that it has to be discussed in a meeting. The only procedural issue that I think Phil might have raised last time is how one can motion and second an item over email, since we're not all together. I'm thinking maybe there could be a different procedure for letters that won't necessarily require a motion second and just a straight vote of yes or no to the letter. But that's just an idea. But yeah, I think it would be good to have some consistency, whether an in-between meeting item would require a motion in a second.
Okay, can I make a motion to, I guess, erase that requirement for issues to have to be discussed at a prior meeting? And then, I don't know, propose coming up with some other kind of system that we can present to the committee at the next meeting next month about how to kind of get through this first and second motion issue.
Great.
That's my
Could you-
motion.
could you clarify the motion? I'm sorry. And I can move on to, sorry, whoever's next. Nick, could you clarify that motion? Sorry, I'm trying to understand it clearly.
So, motion to erase the requirement to have to present at a public meeting before having an email vote. And then, yeah, hear alternatives for the first and second motion issue that you had raised, Chewy.
Excuse me, if I can even propose an alternate motion, if an issue is presented in urgency, that if two of the committee members, you know, are in agreement of presenting that together, that's a motion and a second, like stated right there. Myself and this person seconds it, of course, with their permission, and then it's already. It reduces the back and forth. It's kind of like we already, I don't know if that's allowed. I don't know if that's allowed as far as the Brown, like where you get consensus from one person, a motion as a presented the first time it presents itself to the group. And if not, I'll go back to the original motion. I'll second the original motion, but I just don't know if that's even a motion that I can make.
Great, Janice. So I'm hearing that, I'm trying to think of how this could be worded. And if I understood you correctly, Janice, is for someone to open it up for a first and a second in the email thread, and then having it move to voting in the email.
Yeah, I think that might conflict because it's not public openly. So I think that can be coordinated by folks offline. Like, hey, I'm sending this email, you know, whatever second there is should follow right away. That way there's less time. So I think that's just up to the organizer. So
Oh, got it. So before it even comes to us, it should have support from 2 committee members for us to bring into the full group for a vote.
I think it'll happen in real time. Say I present a proposal of support, and then, you know, it's up to us as organizers, whoever's presenting that, to, you know, have the support of another person. That way it just moves it along. Like one email says, I motion to bring this, and then another person has to second it, and then the voting happens just like we would, I think.
But where does the discussion come in? Because I think that usually happens after the motion is made, right?
After the second is made, or is it?
Yes, I thought so.
Great. And I do want to be sensitive on time, since we do have an activity scheduled for this time. Are folks willing for us to make some edits and bring it back for April based on this discussion? Or would
I second the first motion.
Great. And Nick, you're still okay with your motion? Original motion?
Yeah, so it would be erasing the language, getting rid of the language requiring a prior presentation at a meeting, public meeting before, and then I guess opening it up for edited language on the first and second motion issue that you had mentioned earlier. So calling it back for edits during the next meeting.
Great.
Just sorry to interrupt. A quick question for Nick. Nick, would you also include in your motion what Chewy had mentioned before about including a requirement for folks to indicate that they had reviewed the meeting recording prior to a vote?
Yes, I'm fine with that.
Great. Okay. Any other comments or questions? So the motion is to remove the requirement for email voting, that it has to be discussed at a meeting, and directs us to provide alternatives for consistency purposes with other voting procedures that are laid out in the charter.
And including the requirement for email votes for those absent at meetings to review recordings in advance of a vote.
Great. Any other comments, or otherwise I'm going to move ahead with a roll call vote. Great, hearing none. Anna, can you pull out the voting sheet and do roll call?
Yes. Okay. Okay, so when I call your name, please say yay, nay, or if you abstain. So first we have Keith Corey. Keith?
Yes.
Got it. Thank you, Keith. And we don't have Jack nor Maxie here. So moving on to Sarah.
Abstain.
Okay. Commissioner Sandy Naranjo.
Yeah.
What was that? Commissioner Sandy Naranjo.
Yeah.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
She said yes.
Yes, okay, got it. Thank you. Tim?
Yes.
Nick?
Yes.
And then I know Martin's not here, so David?
Yes.
Okay. Diane?
I don't see Diane on the call anymore.
Okay. Next we have Janice.
Yes.
John.
Sorry about
Anna,
that.
can you hear
Yes.
me now?
Oh,
Si me
John?
mencionaron, sí.
Okay. Okay. Primero, first John. We'll go back to John.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. Alicia.
Oh, ahora sí, sí. Sí.
Okay. Gracias. Margarita.
Sí.
Gracias. Vanessa.
Abstain.
Sylvia.
I don't see Sylvia on the call.
Ashley.
Yes.
Okay. Josephine.
Yes.
Thank you, Josephine. And Maritza.
Yes.
Great. And I want to make sure Diane also said yes over the chat.
And okay.
Great. Thank you, everybody. And we'll come back at a later meeting for any edits for consistency purposes. Great.
Otra vez no se escucha la interpretaciones.
Gracias, Alicia.
Se queda callada, no
Can
sé.
we do a quick interpretation check? Vicky or Gloria, could you speak now? Vicky, I see.
We're not hearing anything.
Yes, I can hear Gloria now. ¿Pueden oír a Gloria?
Yes.
Sí, ya lo escucho.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Yo no la oigo. Me saca de la interpretación en español y me brinca.
Yo sí la
inglés.
escucho, soy Alicia.
Sí,
No.
yo soy Margarita y no la escucho.
Margarita, ¿te saca del globo? ¿Eso es lo que anda pasando?
Lo pongo y sale inglés, español, y lo pongo en español y cada vez que le apachurro Dan, me brinca a inglés otra vez.
Ok. ¿Puede salirse de la reunión y venir para atrás a ver si eso arregla el problema?
Ya lo hice una vez, pero lo voy a intentar otra vez.
Ok, gracias, Margarita. Thank you. While Margarita gets settled, Monique, do you want to go ahead and start the next agenda item?
Sure. Thank you so much, Chewy. It is always a tough act to follow, those riveting bylaw conversations. So, so I hope everyone can like stretch, take a deep breath, and we'll get started on some more fun things. And I really appreciate everybody's participation at the last meeting, both folks online and also folks who were able to be at the meeting in person. We had a great conversation, both online and in person, in terms of 3 different subcommittees or working groups. And a lot of amazing ideas were generated in each one of those conversations. But let me back up for just a minute, and also let me adjust my chair because it just went down. So when I engaged many folks in one-on-one conversations over the months of December and January. A lot of folks really expressed, excuse me, an interest in having, in essentially having the community steering committees be more engaging, more active, and more towards refocusing the purpose around moving the SERP forward in all different ways, from engaging community members to ensuring that data is accessible and meaningful for the community, but also in terms of SERP implementation and funding as well. So those were kind of the 3 different working groups that were discussed last week. Could we go to the next slide, please? Awesome, thank you. So this is what we're gonna do. We are going to have breakout groups, and the names that are listed here are the names of folks who signed up for that particular subcommittee. As you can see, some people signed up for multiple subcommittees. That's okay. but you'll be deciding today which group you'd like to go into. And when I'm finished giving kind of directions of what to expect during our breakout session, Joannie will be posting, or Anna will be posting in the chat box, a link to the Zoom room that you'll be going to. If you are going to be joining the community outreach and subcommittee, you will actually be staying in this Zoom session here. So you don't have to click on any link to leave to another Zoom room. If you're going to be in the air monitoring, there's going to be a link posted that's going to be labeled in the chat box. You'll click on that link to go there. And if you're going to go to the SERP implementation and funding subcommittee, you'll be going to that particular link that will be labeled as well. Can we go to the next slide? And the next slide, please. So what are we going to be doing in these breakout sessions? You will have an opportunity to discuss with your subcommittee peers these questions. Someone from Estelano Advisors is going to facilitate this part of the conversation. Well, there will be a poll, and you'll be able to, as a group, collectively decide, you know, when this group should meet, when your subcommittee should meet, how often it should meet. So there's going to be a wide variety of options for you to choose from. What we want to do as well to simplify things, we do want some kind of consistency and uniformity between each of the three groups. So we're asking folks to choose kind of their top 2 priorities. Then we'll kind of take back and then be able to see where we maybe see synergy. So for example, one of the options there is using 30 minutes to 45 minutes of an existing CSC monthly meeting time for subcommittee discussions. If we do that, that would need to be part of maybe the top 2 for every committee, so that we can plan accordingly in our agenda. So there's going to be an opportunity to do that, and you'll be able to select from 2 choices. After that, and let's go ahead and scroll down, Joannie, to slide number 7. Or actually, I apologize. Let's go to slide number 5. So each working or each subcommittee is going to actually have a link to this particular slide deck. And every section in the slide deck, or there's a section in the slide deck particularly speaking to the action items that you all co-developed last time. You'll have a list of all those action items that you all shared at your subcommittee table. And if we go to item number 7, or slide number 7, there are more action items than we actually have capacity collectively to do. You know, and so we're going to go through a prioritization exercise where you all in the subcommittee will identify your top 2 or 3 priority items from the entire list of really amazing ideas that you'd like to move forward immediately. And then there's also here a kind of like a timeline where you can change the dates. It could be months or what have you. And what are kind of your next steps or action items that you will be doing in order to support the movement of those priority items moving forward. After you have some time with your working group, and actually, Joannie, go ahead and put in the chat box, and so we can make sure people are getting in the slide deck. Oops, don't click on that link yet. But like the slide deck, so that people can click on that and start to look at that. So after that, we're all going to get back together in this main room. So the original link that you got for this meeting, come back to this main room, and we're going to have an opportunity for folks to be able to share out their top 3 priorities and what their kind of next steps are around that. Are there any questions with that? And Joannie, would you mind going back up to the slide number 2 that has the list of folks? All right, so that's the list of folks who signed up for the various different committees. Again, if you signed up for the community outreach, you'll stay in this room. You don't have to click on any links at all. If you signed up for the air monitoring, I believe Joannie put it in the chat box. Go ahead and click on that link, and somebody in air monitoring will be meeting you over there shortly. And then Joannie's going to put in just a second the link to the SERP implementation and funding subcommittee. There we go. The link just showed up in the chat box. So if you're interested in engaging in that subcommittee conversation, go ahead and click on that link, and then we will meet you over there. Any questions, comments? We'll all come back to this main part of the room by like 6:18 or so, okay? And then or like 6:20 at the latest, and then we'll take it from there. All right, so go ahead and click on the links if you're leaving to another room. If you're not, if you're gonna stay in the community engagement, then go ahead and stay here. I'm gonna head over to the SERP implementation and funding, and so I'll see folks over there. All right, everyone, I will see you all back in this main room at 6:20.
And Giovanni, did you want me to lead the discussion or are you leading it?
I'll be just leading the polling part, but just give me 1 second. I see that our interpreter, Vicky, just signed back on. So let me just make sure she's able to join interpretation.
Sure.
Because all I can do right now is listen. Oh, come on. I'm trying to change my name too.
You have a question, Glory?
Oh, Gloria, I let her know that I was having troubles getting back in.
So everyone just go ahead and hold tight while we figure out this interpretation thing.
Ajá. Espérense, por favor, estamos tratando de poder activar el canal de interpretación de nuevo.
Gloria, are you still with us in the main room?
Oh.
Sí, sí la escucho, sí la escucho. Se la escucho, Gloria.
Oh, do you want me to go to somewhere else? Is Gloria is in there? I heard somebody just say they can hear her.
So maybe we can have you switch. Gloria was supposed to link to the sorry, there's an echo.
If you can send me her link, then I can do that because I don't have her link. I was going to go to the one that Domingo's in. That's the link that I have.
Okay. Give me a second.
I'll wait until I see it on email and then I'll.
You'll be
Oh, the joys of. Yeah.
You'll be in the air monitoring one, and let me drop the link in the
Okay, thank you.
If interpretation on orange is on orange, I think we can just go ahead and get started. Okay.
Want me to log out and I'll just wait until I get the email?
No, there's a link.
Oh.
In the chat right now, so you can just click
Oh.
on that instead.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Okay. All right, so hi everyone. We're going to start off by doing a quick Zoom poll just to confirm how frequently we want the subcommittee to meet. We're going to go through some questions, and at the end of the session, we'll revisit them just to double check nothing has changed after all of the discussion. So give me a second to just launch the poll. Okay. So the first question should be up. And for the first two options for how often should this group meet, those meetings that would be during the steering committee would be about 30 to 40 minute breakout group. So it wouldn't be for the whole session. It'd just be 30 to 40 minutes each. And is everyone able to see and vote on the poll?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Sí, las miro yo.
Gracias. Our options are how often should this group, should once a quarter during the steering committee meetings, once a month during steering committee meetings, once a quarter outside of the steering committee meeting, once a month outside of steering committee meetings, or twice a month outside of steering committee meetings. And I'll give everyone a couple more seconds to vote. Yes, John or Gloria, sorry. Is there a problem with the interpretation?
Sí, yo sí la escucho.
Okay. John?
Yeah. I work with quite a few schools, 10 in this area. I guess my first impression is where exactly on the map do we want to cover for the community? You know, what section? And then the other, we got, summer coming along. And so many of the families won't be available. So what are your thoughts on that?
And would this mean, the question would be for the families to join these meetings?
Well, I work primarily with the principals at each school. And then I also work with the medical staff and the counselors at each school. That being said, they, if you will, they know who's the most needy of the most needy.
Una pregunta.
And so I'm just trying to get a feel for how I would be able to apply where I'm at, what I'm doing currently with the schools. And then, of course, the schools being out during summer break, that would kind of, eliminate several months.
Yeah. For your first part of the question, I feel like that's something we might be able to discuss when we're going over priorities and some of the things we've identified that the group wants to focus on. In terms of being able to involve parents and students during the summer, maybe that would mean meeting monthly, right, instead of quarterly. Or I'm not sure if you're proposing maybe meeting on weekends or instead of during the week. But at least specifically for this question on when to meet, I think we can wait. Yeah, we discussed.
Well, my thought is you know, like at Perkins Elementary, for instance, anytime I want to have a meeting, I usually work with the principal at that school. Okay. And then we put together a schedule about, you know, what it is that we want to talk about, not just events that we're doing through the Good Neighbor Project, but also, you know, how are things going with, you know, our particular group. And it's kind of nice to bring everything together and update them on several different issues in the community. And I'm thinking that would be a good time. Now, generally speaking, we do that during for events like at, you know, we usually have a big Christmas party where as many as 600 kids and their families show up. And we do that once a year. But I think it would be nice if we could at least do something, I guess, then quarterly at that level, at least for the schools, and then maybe more often on our local goals, like for instance, with our veterans and other small groups within this map, if we have one, that we can kind of focus in on. I'm right here in Barrio Logan, so it seems natural for me to be here, but I'm just wondering what your thoughts are and which way to go on that one.
Okay. I know one of the suggestions from last month's meeting was having a booth or tabling at different, I think, places like schools or festivals and carnivals. So I think if it's the case of more sharing what the steering committee is doing, what the subcommittee is doing, and hearing from the community, I think that would be separate from these specific meetings that we're voting on right now. So when to meet, these meetings would be more for just a subcommittee to get together and do their planning. In terms of the actual outreach, I think that's something we can discuss in the next few slides when developing the priorities, because that sounds a bit more like working directly right with those schools, and maybe setting up some time for those booths or those tables that were proposed last month.
Okay, well, I think from my own personal opinion would be that if we were to work on a monthly basis, you know, if we could all figure out a convenient time for everyone, it would be kind of a nice time to share and develop plans for our quarterly meetings at the schools and kind of go from there. At least that's my initial thought, but I'd love to hear from anyone else who has some thoughts on it.
And before we jump into that, Alicia, ¿tiene una pregunta?
Sí, mi pregunta era respecto a las preguntas que están aquí. ¿Es del grupo que estamos ahorita lo que se está mencionando o es un grupo específico los que están los que salieron en la lista de los nombres que estaban en la pantalla? Porque estaba yendo al señor, pues yo ya no acudo a ninguna escuela, puesto que ya no tengo niños chiquitos, nomás tengo uno y ya está grande. Pero sí estaría muy bien que la reunión como lo que estamos haciendo, sí se hiciera en persona. Es mucho, para mí es mucho más mejor, puesto que podemos dialogar todos en persona. Dar nuestras sugerencias o nuestras pues inquietudes que también se tiene para la comunidad. Y aquí estoy viendo que hay una vez a trimestre, que es cada 3 meses, ¿verdad? Si no estoy mal. Y es en persona. Entonces, se puede poner más de 2 preguntas o contestar más de 2 preguntas, perdón, o nomás es una a la vez.
I'll reply in English just to make it easier for our interpreters. Thank you, Alicia. So this group is only specifically for community outreach. That's why John brought up the schools.
Okay.
It's an overall broad focus on community outreach. And then for the question, for the first question, you should be able to pick more than one option if you're in between quarterly or monthly or meeting inside or outside the steering committee meetings. But for question 2 and 3, you'll only be able to vote on one, but we'll consider the top 2 choices that folks pick collectively.
I also want to add that we only have 10 minutes left till we
Muchas
rejoin the
gracias.
group. So let's go ahead and get through the questions quickly so we make sure that we have these answers so we can get the group started. So if you want to take it away, Joanny.
Yes.
Thank
I noticed
you.
only 4 of 10 folks on the call have participating. Is anyone having any trouble voting? Like actually voting on the Zoom poll? If not, maybe folks.
Did mine go through? I don't know if it went through or not, Vanessa.
I'm not able, it's anonymous. I'm not able to see who's voted. But okay. Just to keep us going, I'm sharing the results from the votes that we do have.
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to finish voting, but
Let me see if I can. I think if I relaunch it, it might erase the votes we already have. So John, if you let us know, I can just note down the votes you would have made.
well, my personal feeling is that we should not take time away from our monthly meetings, have separate meetings, number one, okay? And this way, on a monthly basis, we can discuss what efforts we had for the month and, what our strategy is, coming up. Are we going to have a booth? Are we going to do this, at a certain time? And then, of course, do our school planning with with teachers and principals at each school on a quarterly basis, but on a monthly basis, we can do our outreach and whatnot, let them know what's of interest to them, and figure out what that might be, and then come back to the group the following month to decide what we need to know.
Okay. So that sounds like maybe either the once a quarter outside of the steering committee meeting or once a month. I think even with that vote, it seems like the winner is once a month during steering committee meetings. So that would be at every steering committee meeting to have between 30 and 40 minutes for the group to meet, and then alternating between online and in person, which might just correspond with if it's every month with the alternating in-person meetings we already have anyway, which are quarterly, and then weekdays after 5, which corresponds with our steering committee times.
Yeah, my only thought is that when we have community updates or people who want to come to our meetings, it gives us less time to go ahead and work. I can't speak for everyone's schedule, but because I do a lot of crisis intervention and suicide counseling on those very nights, it would be nice if it was on a separate evening for me, at least. Obviously, I can't speak for others, but having it as a separate meeting, and for me would be the best. Not on the same evening. Kind of two items.
Okay, thank you, John. And then really quick, just the last 2 questions, if folks can just drop in the chat if there is some type of support that you all see yourselves needing from the Air District, or just any additional comments or suggestions. That could be things like interpretation or something else that the district could provide at these meetings, keeping in mind that they would most likely be during our steering committee meetings already. So, we'd have the resources we normally have during meetings. Okay. Feel free to drop them in the chat in case you do think of something else, but want to move on to the priorities for groups activity. I'll pass it to Melina.
Thank you, Johnny. So in this group, this is actually what we're going to go through, John, specifically in terms of what the priorities are going to be, what it is that you want the committee to do. So we are going to, I know that in the past we discussed about probably getting newer people to join. What is it that we want to see? If you guys can just go ahead and jump in and raise your hand and maybe, or put in the chat, what is it that you feel are the top 3 priorities for this group? Maritza, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I think one of the biggest priorities is just having the awareness in the community. It's not many people, I think, know about the steering committee meetings.
Okay, so more outreach, more public awareness. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, John, go ahead and unmute yourself.
For me, it would be a matter of on the monthly meetings, we're able to reach out to community members, through the parks and recs and those kinds of things. And then on our quarterly meetings, let's say for the schools, during the in-between times, we can be talking with the principals and some of the staff at the different schools, and at the same time do some reach out with some of the other nonprofits and whatnot within our area, so that we can incorporate all that.
So would that be bringing new partners into this group, inviting new members? Is that what you mean by that? Or maybe sharing information with those groups?
Well, it could be new members, but for those who want to help the community as a whole. But at the same time, it would allow us to expand our reach into the community. Once again, if we had a map, if you will, then we could kind of pinpoint those organizations within that map, and then definitely reach out to them to because everyone has their own contact list. Okay. And I think we would get a much broader response from the community.
Perhaps this could be something that maybe members, if they already have an existing connection, that maybe they might invite someone to come to and join the meetings. After all, when you share that, when people come to meetings because somebody they know asked them to come.
Well, exactly.
So maybe having a database, maybe everybody shares their connections, shares their contacts, invites them to come to the meetings, something of that sort. So maybe, is it new connections? Is that what you would call it? Like new connections or more outreach?
Well, once again,
increased outreach.
One of us have, if you will, a limited time and space that we have influence over. And so it would be nice for all the organizations within a particular area to be able to get the word out to their individual members. Not everyone is going to listen to me because they don't know me. So, but someone I might know, like I work with other nonprofits all throughout the South Bay. And when I want to, do a programming with them, then we team up. That's what basically we would be doing, is teaming up with some of the different groups, particularly Parks and Recs, because we got baseball, soccer, tennis, and everything else that's going on, say during the summer months. And it would be to me a much broader reach to connect. I mean, we're talking about some pretty serious stuff here, and we need to get the word out. I mean, it's amazing to me how, we got people within just a few blocks have no idea what's going on, zero. And we need to fix that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that would involve doing making new connections and further outreach. As I see in the chat that Vanessa wrote funding to make changes. What type of changes? I think we need to focus on kind of like more specific, like what type of changes are they that you want to see, that you think funding will help make changes for? Is there
Even
anything
the
specific?
community education and participation, even the public awareness. I don't know if we do need any resources like paper or just stuff for the community. Who's going to pay for it? That's what I meant about funding.
Okay, so for like probably like pamphlets, brochures, is that what you mean?
Anything we might need, if we're getting booths and we're giving something away, or if we're making pamphlets, if we're giving out water, I mean, it has to come from somewhere. I just
Okay.
don't know where it comes from, if funding, if we have it.
Okay, so outreach resources.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Outreach resources. Okay, great. Can we add that to the list, Giovanni, please?
I'll just give you for instance, when we meet, there's water, coffee, and those kinds of things, and it helps people stay awake during a meeting. And
absolutely.
And because like with myself, I work with different recreational groups in school. Like I told you, it's kind of nice to be able to, I'm old school, have a nice cup of coffee, and share that with your friends. And to be able to have that kind of funding would be awesome, number one. But number two, the pamphlets, anything like that, both in English and Spanish. And within some of our groups, even, in Tagalog and some of the other languages that are represented here in our community.
Okay, so it sounds like we need more collateral, more outreach collateral.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we add that to the list, Johnny, as priorities outreach collateral?
And stop me if you think I'm talking too much.
No, you're fine. It's just I think we have to what time are we supposed to get back, Johnny? We're supposed to get back, right?
Yes, I think, well, we're in the main room, so folks are starting to trickle back in from their other groups.
Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Is this the only slide, or we have another
the only slide? So
okay,
we're good. And hopefully the group is going to have more time to meet again next month, so we can keep developing these ideas then.
Absolutely, and we can definitely narrow them down. All right.
And also, let me say that if anyone would like to get with me just to, do some brainstorming, I'm open. And I must say that this is a big thing for me. Okay. These are
absolutely, and we'll definitely have more time to discuss this in once we get things settled and we can get these subgroups set up.
Yeah.
And we can discuss more on outreach efforts.
Because I feel like these kids are my kids.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I can't fail on this.
Yeah, and I know you've been doing this work for a long time, so I know it's near and dear to your heart.
Only for 50 years.
Yeah, long time.
But formally as a nonprofit since 2008. So, but yeah, I'd love to be able to, share with folks and get some insight from them. And there's just so much more that we can do. And I realize that, people are busy. So if they're able to, to get some funding for additional time that they're serving, that would be nice also.
Mm-hmm. We'll definitely take that into consideration.
Sorry,
Nick, are we ready to go back?
Well, you
Okay.
guys stay, right?
Did the other team make it back over?
Yes.
no,
The
here.
air monitoring is here. Yeah.
Monitoring,
Looks
okay,
like we're all
awesome.
here. Wow.
Awesome. So why don't we have group one, or I'm sorry, the community outreach group, share first kind of what their top priorities are.
Sure. The community outreach team wants to do more community education. They want more collateral that they can, resources that they can take out to the community so that people are more informed. They want outreach resources, whether that is having spaces so that people can meet, maybe being able to pay for brochures that they can take out to their friends and families to make them more informed, and establishing new connections. I think that has been the biggest thing, establishing new connections and bringing more folks in and involving a lot more nonprofits that are within the community.
Awesome. Thanks, Melina. Anyone else from that group want to share anything in addition? Awesome. So let's go ahead, for the sake of time, let's go ahead and go to the air monitoring group.
We didn't get a chance to really hash out those priorities. We were still discussing some of the potential activities, but are hoping to take the next meeting to kind of hash these out.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So it looks like you all got more activities on the board, which is not a bad thing. Great. Let's go ahead and go to the last group, SERP implementation and funding. All right. This was an ambitious group. I love it. We'd like to share out from this group. Dewey, do you want to go? Or Josephine, do you want to share out?
No, I think you should do it, Monique,
Okay.
because we were kind of between the 3 pages, and I think what you captured was
right.
more concise than we are. We all had going.
I've been voluntold, so no problem. Okay, so so yeah, what we found too is that a lot of the activities listed, there was a lot of synergy between multiple ones, and so we were kind of combining some of those activities as a way to squeeze in more opportunities to do more of these things. People felt that, you know, identifying barriers in terms of what's kind of getting in the way of accessing resources now and developing strategies to access those resources. Identifying projects for community air grants that support SERP implementation and actions that can immediately improve indoor air quality for residents, but really at the heart of it too is trying to seek funding for things that are going to immediately benefit residents and what residents want. Ensure that each public agency is aligning their legislative priorities and that they're seeking funding, but alongside kind of the legislative priorities conversation is the legislative advocacy as well. So making sure that not only that you have that legislative agenda and priorities, but that we're collectively advocating for that, whether that be in Sacramento or DC, and how are our public agencies also in alignment in doing that. Number 4, develop and implement strategies to ensure planning alignment as well. We know that there's a lot of plans here. It's great that Tim from Sandag's here, right? There's a lot of plans that are constantly being developed, revised. How are those plans in alignment with both the SERP and MCAS as well? How are they supporting? So having the team keep a pulse on that. And then number 5 is develop a SERP MCAS standards for new tenants as part of lease agreements. So moving forward, how are those kind of agreements structured? What's in there, and is there alignment with the SERP and MCAS in terms of those agreements as well? And then number 6, which is something that at APCD we've been thinking of doing. So we'd be supporting on this, doing more of the lifting on this, but develop a real-time dashboard to present at every meeting, and put on the APCD's website, indicating SERP implementation progress. So kind of having a thermometer, right, for each of these things as well. From this group, anything else that would be important to note? Cool. Awesome. So it was a great discussion all in all, and we ended this right on time. So thank you all. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be looking at the survey results that you all shared in terms of when you'd like to be meeting. And then Chewy will be sending out a follow-up email
in terms of when you all will be convening a subcommittee or working group members as well to talk about next steps, which is kind of like, what are the steps, what are the strategies in order to achieve those or do those actual activities as well. Before we transition to the next item on the agenda, I just want to check in and see if folks have any questions or comments or anything that they'd like to share on this particular agenda item before we transition. John.
Yes. First of all, for that last group, they did an awesome job. I really appreciate what they put in there. Just recently, I contacted David Alvarez's office, and we're working on a couple different projects. One has to do with medical equipment. If your doctor basically certifies that you need any kind of medical equipment, it's tax deductible. But also because of the Navy and the other, the Port of San Diego, there might be other funding that might be available on a federal level, having to do like one of the projects that I'm working on right now has to do with these split air and heat units, these mini splits. And these mini splits, it would appear that just right off the bat, you can have them attached to most buildings. It cleans all of the air before it even comes into your building. Okay. Which I think is awesome because, with the little air purifiers that we got, grandma and grandpa got one, but how about the kids in the next room? Okay. Yeah. And not to mention that all of this particulate matter gets over all the furniture, over the clothes, and so on and so forth. Yeah. This would actually solve that to a much greater degree.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, John. Let me just check the chat box. Okay, cool. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, thank you all for narrowing down, but also adding as well to the activities for group number 2, the air monitoring. This is really setting the foundation of what you all will be working on over the course of the next few months to a year. And we really want this space to be an action-oriented space. And so this is setting the foundation for us being an action-oriented group as well. So just thank you all. And as I mentioned, Chui and his team will be following up with you all in terms of the specific logistics that you all shared and when you can expect to meet again. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it back over to Chui for the next item on the agenda.
Thank you, Monique. And thank you all for your participation and engagement in the activity. At this moment, we're going to hand over the mic over to San Diego Gas and Electric, and giving a warm welcome to Nick Badillo, correct me if I'm wrong in pronunciation, who is stepping in while Liana is out sick.
Hi, welcome. Yes, you did pronounce it correctly. Thank you for the warm welcome. My name is Nick, and I serve as an advisor here at SDG&E within the Clean Transportation Department. And so for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to go ahead and go through and talk about our current program offerings. And so let's go ahead and get started. Can we go ahead to the next slide? Perfect, thank you. So here at SDG&E, one of the biggest questions that we get is, what are we doing for port communities? What are we continually looking at and helping to ultimately decarbonize? And so as part of that, the program currently relates to CERP goals, specifically for medium and heavy duty transit. And so as part of that, SDG&E provides electric vehicle infrastructure for little to no cost. And we do understand that medium and heavy duty fleets are unique. And so we have quite a lot of options that do help to really drive electric vehicle adoption and really reduce those particle emissions within the community. Okay, we'll go ahead and hop over to the next slide. Thank you, thank you. So for our very first slide here, we're going to go through the Power Your Drive for Fleets program here at SDG&E. So this program initially started in September of 2020 and will continue all the way till 2025. And our whole entire goal here is to essentially make electric vehicle infrastructure easy. There can be a lot of components and it can be rather complicated. And so we're here to support with questions, provide the actual infrastructure, and also talk about fleets and really identify what the needs of your potential business or fleet are. So we'll go ahead to the next slide. So for our program, we've set aside $107 million to be budgeted over this 5-year period. And the goal is to support installations at a minimum of 3,000 customer sites to support charging for a minimum of 3,000 electric vehicles. And so that's going to be electric vehicles class 2 through 8. So on the smaller side, you're going to see those electric F-150 Lightnings, the Rivian R1T for on-road vehicles, all the way up to those class 8 transit trucks and drayage trucks. We also do permit off-road vehicles, such as electric forklifts, any type of yard support equipment within this particular program. So one of the biggest questions that I continually get throughout this presentation is, if I go ahead and I install this infrastructure, do I need to go ahead and register through PlugShare? Is this going to be something that is potentially public? And for this particular program, the answer is no. The infrastructure is built to the needs of your business. So next slide, please. Thank you. And so we have 4 primary requirements to participate in this program. The first of which is to demonstrate a commitment for a minimum of 2 electric vehicles. So that's going to be any vehicle that is considered medium or heavy duty, or essentially have a 6,001 gross vehicle weight rating. For our second requirement, demonstrate a long-term electrification growth plan and schedule of load increase. So for this particular item here, this is increasing the quantity of electric vehicles within your fleet or increasing the utilization of electricity to go ahead and recharge that fleet. Step 3 is an easy one. This one is related to chargers. So we have, for all of our chargers, they must be UL certified. We do have a super comprehensive list, and if you're not sure, we're always here and happy to support. But what it ends up doing is the charger wirelessly submits data to SDG&E for a minimum of 5 years. And the whole intent behind that is to better understand the needs of our electric fleets and ensure that we're building out better clean transportation programs for the future. And then our last requirement is own or lease the property where chargers are installed and operate and maintain vehicles and chargers for a minimum of 10 years. So this program is funded, and the way that it works is we go ahead and we install the infrastructure, and we want to ensure that it will be utilized for a minimum of 10 years. We have a few different options. If you are, looking to potentially relocate towards the end of that 10-year period, but we're here to support throughout the whole entire way. And the whole intent of this program is really making electric vehicle adoption for fleets easy. We'll go to our next slide, please. And so kind of as I previously discussed, these are eligible types of vehicles. So whether you have a shuttle, whether you have any type of off-road vehicle, yard trucks, transportation refrigeration units, you are eligible for this program as long as you meet those minimum thresholds. What's really awesome is this program also benefits small businesses. It is a passion that is near and dear to my heart, and it's really fun to have those conversations and identify, what can my fleet potentially do? Whether you have those 2 vehicles or whether you have 10, we're always happy to have those conversations and see what the potential holds for the future. This isn't supposed to be specifically for super, super large companies that have fleets of 100 vehicles or more. They are eligible to participate in the program, but we strongly encourage small businesses as well, nonprofits, in addition to schools, to go ahead and participate in this program. So we'll move on to our next slide, please. And so we currently have two program options. So this is a customer choice program. And our first offering is option 1, which is referred to as SDG&E owned infrastructure. This is also commonly referred to as the no cost option. So as you can see from the first bar here, let's say you're ready to go ahead and move forward with the program. You're interested in electrifying your fleet and driving electric, and you're ready to go ahead and have all the conduit installed. So for option 1, everything that you see here in teal, SDG&E pays for, constructs, owns, and maintains all of the infrastructure from the power line to just before the installation of the charger. And as a participant of the program, you'd be responsible for not only purchasing those electric vehicles, but purchasing those chargers and connecting the charger to the infrastructure. So once again, everything that's highlighted in teal is covered. We have a design team who will work with you to identify what your needs are, what types of chargers you'll go ahead and install, and we'll ensure that we have the necessary conduit and infrastructure to go ahead and support the needs of that particular business. So this is option 1. This is referred to as our no cost option. And so as part of this as well, I like to reiterate that every single fleet is unique. So for this particular option, what we tend to see participate are fleets that have very standard hours of operations. You're going to go ahead and have typical driving route patterns or hours of operations for those vehicles. And there's really nothing too out of the ordinary that you go ahead and see for option 1. So let's move on to the next slide, option 2, please. So option 2 is going to look slightly different. This one is referred to as our low cost option. So very similar to option 1, as you see here from the power line to the meter, everything that's highlighted in teal, SDG&E pays for, constructs, owns, and maintains. So very similar to option 1, we'd go ahead and have our design team assemble and create design plans for the utility side infrastructure based upon the needs of your business. So everything that's highlighted in green, this one works a little bit different. So let's say I'm a small business and I have a little bit of unique needs. I'm interested in installing solar on the building, but I'm also interested in battery storage as well. In this case, we go ahead with option 2. And as the customer, what you would initially do is you would hire a third-party contractor to design and build out the customer side infrastructure. SDG&E is going to review those plans, make any necessary revisions or suggestions, and then approve those plans. The contractor would go ahead and construct everything that's highlighted in green, so that's everything behind the meter. And at the very end of the project, SDG&E will go ahead and provide a rebate of up to 80% of the costs. And we like to say up to 80% of the cost because 9 times out of 10, we are able to go ahead and provide that maximum rebate amount. However, if you're, let's just say, as an example, you're constructing a building along with the electric vehicle infrastructure, they might potentially intertwine. And so depending upon how that is constructed, we may need to have a conversation about what can and cannot be covered. So this is referred to as our option 2. So let's move on to our next slide, please. What's really awesome about this program that I really like is we do also provide an additional rebate. So for option 1 or option 2, you are required to go ahead and purchase those electric vehicle chargers. And so as part of this, especially if you are a Portside community, you are eligible for an additional rebate up to 50% of the cost or the maximum amount. And so this can greatly help to reduce the overall electric vehicle adoption cost. And so depending upon what charger you selected, you will go ahead and receive that rebate amount. So it's highlighted up there. We see for the very first one, it highlights 19.2 kilowatts. So that's going to be a level 2 charger. We'll pay up to that $3,000 amount. For, let's say you go with a really large charger, a DC fast charger for your fleet, we'd go ahead, let's say it's 150 kilowatts. We would go ahead and provide up to $75,000 per charger. So at this point, there are a few additional programs outside of SDG&E that can cover the additional costs. But for a lot of our fleets, we like to ensure that they are maximizing their cost savings. And so that's part of the conversation that we do have. Next slide, please. Thank you, thank you. Also, as part of this program, we do install a separate meter for both options. What's really awesome about this is you can track specifically how much electricity is being utilized to recharge your fleet. And so as part of this, it's really awesome because you are able to eliminate demand charges and really maximize those cost savings. So on average, this fluctuates a little bit. Cost savings by driving electric, especially for electric fleets, are up to 50% compared to diesel. So we have a lot of questions for customers where they're like, I'm interested in driving electric. I have a cost that I'm really familiar with when it comes to spending on money on diesel. What does it look like for, if I switched over to electricity? Sometimes there's increased time of use rates. And what's really awesome is this does help to greatly reduce those costs. And so as part of this, we do complete a custom rate analysis, and we'll go through this with you every step of the way. So I know this is kind of a lot of information, but if you're interested, if you're not really sure where to start, we're always here. There's no charge for any of this. And it's a really great resource for us to start having those conversations and ensure you have everything you need in order to transition to an electric fleet. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so to provide an accurate overview, one of our biggest questions that we continually get is how long is this project going to take? And so depending upon your request for a specific type of charger and the size of your fleet, this can take anywhere from 11 to 16 months. And so sometimes we'll have customers say, hey, I bought 3 or 4 electric vehicles. I'm ready to have these installed tomorrow. And unfortunately, we don't have that turnaround time, but we are able to ensure that your site is up to the needs of the business. And so this customer journey ensures that we're able to meet that. And so we'll make sure to include this slide. There's quite a lot of content to go through here, and I want to make sure that we get through the entirety of the presentation, but we'll move on to the next slide, please. And so we actually are hosting SDG&E EV Fleet Day. So this is going to be April 6th at the Port Pavilion on Broadway Pier. So whether you have quite a lot of experience, operating a medium or heavy duty fleet, or you're a small business owner who's looking to go ahead and transition to a few electric vehicles, this is a fantastic opportunity to not only come and speak with our team, but we have a lot of vendors who attend as well, OEMs who produce vehicles, and then manufacturers for electric vehicle chargers. And so there is absolutely zero charge to participate. We do just request that you register. And so as part of this as well, we do have a Spanish translator who will be available for the panel discussion. And then we have several members of our team who do speak Spanish as well. So we strongly encourage you to attend and get all your questions out, whether it's something as simple as, what is a level 2 charger? Or if it's going to be a lot larger in terms of, I'm not really sure what the cost is to operate a fleet of 100 vehicles. What are my needs in terms of chargers? We're all here for that. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. And then we do have another program as well. This is referred to as Rule 45. So to differentiate between Power Your Drive for Fleets, which is the first program I just discussed, and Rule 45. Rule 45 is utilized a lot of times for customers who might not necessarily meet that vehicle threshold, who might have additional considerations where they might need chargers for medium and heavy duty vehicles, in addition to light duty everyday electric vehicles. And so for this particular program, what's really awesome is we go ahead and SDG&E pays for the utility side make-ready infrastructure. We do cover a lot of additional costs, kind of like, let's say you're going to have all the utility site infrastructure installed, and we're going to dig into your parking lot, and we are going to go ahead and we'll be responsible for repaving that parking lot and ensuring that you have the necessary transformer and electrical conductors. So this is for, once again, Rule 45 is specifically for utility side make-ready equipment. And it's really for those who might not necessarily fit within the fleets program or might have really unique needs, especially if you have a site that's, let's say, a few acres and you're going to install chargers every 300-400 feet, and they're not going to be all on the line. So thank you. We'll move on to our next slide, please. And so we also have a few different differences between Rule 45 and Rule 16. The way that I like to think about Rule 16 is Rule 16 is a service extension. So you already have electrical service, and we go ahead and pay for a specific allowance to go ahead and install all of the equipment on the utility side of the meter. For Rule 45, once again, we're going to go ahead and we will pay for all of the utility side infrastructure, but that's specifically for electric vehicles. And so as part of this, the way that, I've always kind of looked at this is, we really strongly encourage our customers to identify what does their current business operations look like, and how does SDG&E fit into that picture. And so if you're not sure, and once again, this is quite a lot of information, we encourage you to reach out to either myself or my supervisor, which is included on this presentation, and we can start to have those conversations. I just want to reiterate, if you're not sure where to start, if a lot of this is, very complicated or it seems a little bit challenging, and you're not really familiar with electric vehicle infrastructure or an electric fleet, that's quite all right. And we're happy to have those conversations. And so, yeah, so those are the difference between 16 and 45. And so for our last slide, we generally recommend that customers reach out to our team first, and we can direct them on as to whether you might be Rule 45 or Rule 16. And if you are either Rule 45 or Rule 16, we'll go ahead and send you over to our builder services. That is with a planning team, so you'll be assigned somebody to go ahead and tailor plans specifically to your needs. So there's quite a lot that's going on for this presentation, a lot of information available, but really our whole entire intent is to make installing electric vehicle infrastructure and operating an electric fleet easy. There's plenty of resources throughout the web, and there's a lot of additional funds that are available, maybe through state or federal, that can potentially go ahead and cover the entirety of the cost, not only for the infrastructure, but the chargers. And there's also incentives for vehicles as well. So we're happy to help. But I want to say once again, thank you so much all for your time. I really appreciate it. I will put my information in the chat, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out at any time. So thank you so much again.
Thank you so much, Nick. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions from folks.
So this is all tape recorded. I mean, I would like this presentation available as I move forward in our focus of electrifying the museum.
Perfect, will do. And yes, this will be on the Air District YouTube page, and I can send that link over as well.
And Chewy, so can we, I mean, I participated in the whole program. Is there a possibility of just getting access to this presentation?
Yes. Yeah, you might just have to skip to this time in the video, but I can also send the presentation copy as well.
Yeah, the presentation copy. I mean, I know how to do it on YouTube once I go there, but it would just be so much easier if you could just send a copy of that presentation. I would love to review it because there was too much information to just absorb in that short amount of time.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you. John, followed by Nick Paul. John, I think you're muted.
I'd like to comment that I agree. If we could have this sent out, I really would appreciate it. There's quite a bit of information there. And as far as the speaker, there's a couple things on my agenda where this might actually fit right into. Can you send me your direct contact information?
It's in the chat.
I didn't see it. Let's see.
It just went up right now. Look it up. It's got his contact an email.
Yes, and just to toss in there as well, you know, if you'd like for me to go through this and kind of talk specific plans, I'm happy to set up time. There's no cost, there's no obligation. We're happy to help in any way that we possibly can.
Great. Thank you, Nick, and thank you, John. Nicholas?
Hi, Nick. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. You know, I had a quick question about the program requirements that you went over. So one of the requirements you mentioned was like, there's a need to demonstrate a long-term electrification growth plan and schedule of load increase. And I kind of wanted to know how that would work with some of our smaller businesses here in Barrio Logan that might have 1 or 2 trucks. Like, how would they then demonstrate like a growth plan? How can they fit into this program?
Sure. So that's a really excellent question. So a lot of the times we have small businesses that will approach SDG&E and say, hey, this might not be a fit just yet. And so we start to go through and we really look at those individualized plans, but this is over a 10-year period. So I frequently work with a lot of small businesses and they might not have the necessary resources to go ahead and purchase 2 electric fleet vehicles at one time. That might be incredibly costly. And so what we can end up doing is we can create a plan where you potentially purchase, let's just say 1 electric vehicle, or we'll go ahead and get the necessary resources and look through funding to purchase that first vehicle. And then maybe 3, 4, maybe even 5 years later, we can go ahead and purchase that second electric vehicle. So I think to clarify, it's a lot of the times, especially for smaller businesses, you're not able to transition your fleet entirely at once, and that's totally okay. And so we're able to create a plan where you're able to procure additional vehicles or chargers. And then as far as increasing that load use increase, it's going to be either or. So we encourage you to increase the volume of electric vehicles within your fleet or the volume of electricity. And for some of the smaller businesses, there might not be able to do that initially, but once again, this is over a 10-year period. So we're happy to walk through and identify how we're able to meet those requirements. Almost all of our businesses are able to do so once we start having that conversation and we really identify their needs.
Thank you, Nicholas, for the question and Nick for the answer. And we'll be sure to have this presentation posted on the Portside website and share Nick's contact information for those who want to follow up. Great. And with that, we do have just a minute to spare, so I do want to take this time to thank everybody, and we're doing our best to keep on time and not keep folks any longer than 7 p.m. on everyone's busy schedules. I'd like to hand it over to Monique for any closing remarks before we sign off for the day.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Just really appreciate you all being present, being engaged, and all. And as Chewy said, we'll get these materials sent out and posted as soon as possible. You'll be hearing from us through Chewy in terms of confirming the logistics for your working group as well. But as always, feel free to reach out to myself or Chewy if there's any questions or if there's any way that we can support you all moving this process forward. With that, we don't have any last announcements. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and say good night to everyone. It's 7 o'clock. And again, thank you all for being engaged and continuing to be engaged in these conversations and all. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks all. Good night.
Thank you, everybody. Buenas noches. Gracias.
Buenas noches.